Welcome back to part 2 of the presentation series, Abortion, Eugenics, the Satanic, Not New World Order, and Natural Law Anarchy. Hopefully you've already seen part 1. It is not essential that you go in order, but highly recommended. Many of you watching this were unexpected babies. 1/3 of all pregnancies are unexpected, and abortion propaganda wants you to believe that unexpected pregnancies are unwanted pregnancies and are a mistake that you can undo. Feminist propaganda wants you to believe that the illegality of abortion involves force, or more accurately violence, the immoral use of force. That if government doesn't grant you access to an abortion doctor, you are being forced against your will to carry the baby to term.
Ms. Colbert.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court, whether our Constitution endows government with the power to force a woman to continue or to end a pregnancy against her will is the central question in this case.
But there is no force here at all. In fact, violence is what is required to murder the unborn baby. It is a common pro-choice argument for the government to get out of her uterus. But what the woman is really saying is for the baby to get out of her uterus dead, and for the government to provide doctors to get in her uterus to do that for her. Unwanted pregnancies do not have less value than wanted pregnancies, for all life is equal and not dependent on the desires or opinions of another. The value of a living being in the uterus is not contingent upon the thoughts and feelings of the mother. Each individual being is sovereign and free with eternal rights as granted by natural law, and children should be protected against the violence of the parents. Materialists see the baby as created by the parents, and that their lives are owned by the mother as developed by her body. But children aren't created by their parents. They come from the evolutionary journey with its beginning and end in the infinite all. Parents' bodies and DNA are merely vehicles for that expression. Under no circumstance does the parent's desires and preferences supersede the rights of life. The trinity of father, mother, child is one of life and sovereignty, not subjugation to violence or slavery. Most women abort because of fear of anything and everything. She is afraid of the future and imagines a dark dystopia with her child, that she would be in a state of constant struggle and pain, and those dark fantasies have been injected into her mind from propagandists. Using fear to control the masses is an ancient trick of the dark rulers. Edward Bernays worked on psychological warfare with the global elite and is known as the father of public relations. In his 1928 book, Propaganda, it says,
"The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of our politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind."
And it's some, I like this corner. I can make choices for me and you make choices for you, and we support each other the way that we can. And that's community, and that's love. Yeah, that's a sermon of witness. All right, amen. Planned Parenthood for me is, I don't know, you guys have always had my back. It's always been a place I knew I could come. The staff at Planned Parenthood is already on my team before we even talk. Just like, you're here on purpose, and so am I. Like, I don't need to lie or, be ashamed of my sexuality. As opposed to sitting at a different doctor's office where I feel like a part of a system, and also a part of a system that doesn't work for me. Planned Parenthood is my healthcare provider.
Planned Parenthood is just great at what they do because they care about everybody, and I feel like me being a part of this organization, I feel like I can contribute because I care. Planned Parenthood is like the epitome of that. Like, they care about everyone and they want to provide access for everyone. Teen Council has influenced me to potentially pursue a 2-year or 4-year degree in something social or reproductive justice related.
Can we not see how the public mind has been corrupted by propagandists to support a multi-billion-dollar industries based on murder?
What do you believe that would be like if you were in control, as far as your attitudes towards your own people?
Well, we are in control because basically we are not a political organization, we are an occult organization. We're working behind the scenes to manipulate the way that people think. The war that we are waging is a guerrilla war on the human mind.
A common pro-choice argument is that the majority of Americans are pro-choice. Yet the majority of opinion is a logical fallacy of the bandwagon. Abortion is in the political limelight because of Donald Trump's position against it, which gives hope to those who stand in the right on this issue. But this won't change anything. It will only appear to. It is the dialectic in action to stimulate the left-right divide and open the steam valve to release pressure on issues not covered by the mainstream media through controlled opposition. It is a chess game that is rigged to serve the ruling class of eugenicists, as our pro-abortion one-world government under the United Nations holds more power than the countries it governs.
Well, I wouldn't say political because we transcend politics. Politics is merely the puppet show of human beings, and we transcend that, but we are interested in the control of human beings for our own purposes.
Alabama passed a law this year during the time of me making this presentation to ban abortions in all cases except to preserve a woman's life. Recall that former abortionist Dr. Levantino explained that terminating a pregnancy to save the mother's life in rare cases is not abortion but terminating a pregnancy, because with illness of the mother or fetal anomalies, the baby can't even develop. You are not robbing the baby of its life. Yet, after the second trimester, you do not have to kill the baby to save the woman's life, as the baby can be removed and live on its own. Actually, aborting the baby at this stage takes too long to save the woman and wouldn't even be effective. Also recall that Levantino explains that the Supreme Court decision takes precedence over all state laws and has already won all challenges, and that infliction to the health of the mother can be anything. It's a legal loophole. Judges are bought and paid for, part of the Good Boys Club. Because man's law is always destined to become more corrupt over time as fear grows in the desire to control population, abortion legalization will never be reversed until the entire state collapses from immorality and the cycle of corruption, unfortunately, repeats. Having sex always entails the risk of pregnancy, even if contraceptive measures are taken, except if we undergo sterilization. If we do not get sterilized or be sexually abstinent, then we take the risk. and with this risk, we cannot fully plan and control every pregnancy. This is why who we sleep with is important, and sex is not a game to be taken lightly. Not only should the risk of pregnancy be taken more seriously, but our minds, hearts, and souls should be taken more seriously as part of the sexual union. The law of gender relates to the law of love. Sex should be about love and not using another person as a sex object. But children that did not come from such love are still the products of love nonetheless. Good can come from evil, even though it can never rationalize evil. Children should be given a chance to live a life better than their parents. Responsible sex is self-respect over animal compulsion and instant gratification, the pursuits of lust and illusion. As a society, we fail to instill healthy values because healthy values requires objective morality. The less we see children as coming from the act of love, being able to abort them, the more meaningless sex our society will indulge in. To believe we must have control over everything that happens to us will create a world without harmony, as this is based in fear and ultimately leads to evil, as it is not in alignment with natural law. When you try to control everything in your life, you end up restricting growth instead of assisting it, because in your finite mind, you think that you are God when you are not. This is living through fear and the ego-based mind, closed heart, and selfish contraction. We live in a fear-based society where our decisions are hijacked by the fight-or-flight response, which perpetuates making wrong choices. The control system exists because of our fear of chaos, since we lack the conviction and certainty of absolute knowledge that knows directly that absolute order exists divinely as natural law. Thus, we are manipulated by those who make a mockery out of the law and use it for destruction. Do we serve in heaven by aligning to natural law, or reign in hell as to oppose it with a lower will? We rob women of the heroic act of motherhood, the passage to a higher spiritual stage in life and maturity, by offering them the choice to murder their unborn child for selfish desires, teaching them that murder is a solution to the so-called problem of life. We are not the controllers of life, nor are we even the full controllers of our destiny. Destiny is only one way towards truth and goodness, no matter how much suffering that entails and how long we oppose it. We will eventually discover the difference between truth and falsehood, right and wrong, good and evil. Natural law requires that we have faith in the future good because we have discovered that morality is real, and that when we take risks and sacrifices to do the right thing, even when it burdens us, we ultimately end up in a better place, and our strength and courage has grown from that sacrifice.
Fear is the killer of love and builds the prison around.
Life happens to us, and often events come our way to help us learn and grow, and when we surrender, we become better and deeper people, living a more meaningful life than when we are resentful towards a change for the better. The greatest way to spiritually grow is by becoming responsible parents and caring for our children, and outgrowing your selfishness, to expand the purpose of life from just getting what we want to sharing love with the other beings we bring into the world. We need to let go and let life take us where we need to grow, as we are not the arbiters of truth nor the dictators of fate. Life has an intelligence of its own and is greater than we are, and we learn by uniting with it and welcoming growth, not condemning it or rejecting it. There will always be reasons to not accept a pregnancy when we come from the materialist perspective that often objectifies life, seeing little humans as objects sucking up our time, energy, and resources. But this is a vampiric view on life itself, a poisoned worldview. It fails to see humans as spiritual ends in themselves. Part of this toxic mindset considers that the baby is using the mother as an incubator, and women act as if they are being exploited by the baby, and that they are being degraded to being a womb by the pro-life stance. I just want to mention that since around 2017, there has been an international group of pro-abortion protesters dressed up as handmaids from the dystopian novel called The Handmaid's Tale in 1985 by Margaret Atwood that has become a TV show on Hulu. In her novel, the U.S. was overtaken by the imaginary state of Gilead, in which politicians forced women to be baby incubators of rape and oppressed women in other ways. For these protesters to have the exact same costume as the TV show reeks of elite funding. When Ohio tried to pass restrictions on late-term abortions, this group protested that Happy Mother's Day would be Happy Incubators Day. In this medical article, it claims that by denying women abortion, their children become dropouts and low performers in society, as if that was the value of life. Another article is similar, and notice how it begins with a lie that abortion solves a problem. Well, let me just tell you that I dropped out of society because of how corrupt it is to become a philosopher, and that I discovered that the system is a complete degradation of real value. These articles assert that one is better off dead if he cannot conform to a system designed by Satanists.
Wake up and recognize that slavery is all around us, and we are part of it.
While it is absolutely tragic for parents to not love their kids, kids grow up and can seek a life of their own, to discover what love is through what love is not. Spiritually, it is wrong to rob people of the lessons that can ultimately help one grow, as healing is the work of our lives here. No one will ever be really ready to be a parent, but certain events happen to us without planning, and when they are good events, we should embrace the change, like when a better job opportunity brings about a move. If a woman is too young and without a committed partner, there's always other options. Other people in her life may be able to help her raise her child. Often the father will want the child, but the woman will not, and it is absolutely wrong to say that the child's life is only at the hands of the mother, when the father is just as much the parent. Often options for the child will be neglected out of fear, as the woman will not want others to take care of her baby, because then she is no longer in control and becomes weighed by guilt. If a woman is in a desperate situation, then she can give up her baby for adoption, so that he or she can find a loving home. But most women choose abortion over adoption because they believe that if they can't have their baby after birth, then no one can. They selfishly desire to abort their child to save themselves a lifetime of grief and guilt if they are unable to raise him or her. But ending their child's life is the worst choice they could make, and does not spare them from a lifetime of grief and guilt, but makes this greater. When a woman gives a child up for adoption, she is often confronted with the fact that she wasn't in a desperate situation, and she merely wanted to live selfishly. And to avoid this realization, she would rather murder her child. Out of existence, out of mind. The woman has the fear that she is not good enough to have her baby, but the real truth is that her baby isn't good enough for her, that her baby is not even good enough to be born. No matter the desperation, there is no situation that makes it right to kill an unborn fetus. All it takes is for a woman to not interfere with her pregnancy to save a life, 9 months of her time, and even if she gives it up for adoption, she will have done a good deed. A heroic deed. But sadly, we live in a society that is so against motherhood and moral sacrifices. We are so about instant gratification and satiating our immediate desires that we live no higher than beasts. Our culture supports women for aborting their child with no reason at all. People always want to use rape as a rationalization for abortion, but this is rarely the case for abortion. Planned Parenthood says that wanting to spend more time with your other kids is a good case for abortion. Nonetheless, in the rape situation, two wrongs don't make a right, and abortion doesn't unrape the woman. While the victim of rape has been severely traumatized, killing her unborn baby will only cause additional trauma to her. Why would we want a person dealing with rape to also experience the death of a loved one? Abortion always hurts at least two people. While the woman was violated, why would we want her to continue the cycle of abuse and violate the innocent life inside of her. The rapist rapes to have power and control over another, and the woman murders to have power and control over another. It is so sad when people conflate the evil act of rape with pregnancy, when these are two completely separate events. Yes, the rape started a chain of events that helped create the pregnancy, but the pregnancy cannot be reduced to the initial act in this fallacy of causality. The child is not evil. The child did not rape the mother. The child is his or her own person. To condemn the child because of the rapist is to punish a person for the deeds of their father, to give someone the death penalty for the crimes of their parents. Do we condemn the relatives of a rapist? This is merely guilt by association. In spiritual reality, our parents' DNA did not create us. We pass through them in the vehicle of the body, as our life is greater than our bodies. Our parents' actions do not reflect who we are. We are sovereign. Rape is a horrific experience never to be condoned, but pregnancy is not part of that experience and does not have to bring pain and suffering to the mother, but can actually bring the opposite. It can bring her healing and joy, which can be redeeming to the rape experience. Again, the woman can always give the child up for adoption, but I have a story of a woman who didn't. My friend is a child of rape, and her story is so immensely beautiful that her mother chose to have her out of love instead of fear. And while she was going to give her up for adoption, when she gave birth to her, she fell in love and felt the joy that any mother should under any circumstance. My friend is quite an amazing person, and we met online in our shared interest of the great work. And when I fight for the babies of rape, I know it's for a good cause, because I'm fighting for the infinite value of this person's life.
My life has value.
Recently, a child in Argentina was raped and denied an abortion by her hospital. Now, obviously, the rape and age of the girl is tragic, but if her pregnancy was not life-threatening to her at that age, then terminating the pregnancy would still not be ethical. Pro-choicers were outraged and made the story a headline. Look at all these abortion activists congregating. Yet imagine if you were that child, who survived a premature birth, by the way, and that you later discovered that thousands of protesters were outraged that you lived. How would you feel as one of these protesters, and the failure of your protest actually saved a life? Utterly despicable. And of course, global government, the UN, shames Argentina for not killing this child. But shame on you, United Nations, for wanting him dead. Life is good and abundant, and we can make room for life to grow. But our poisoned worldview sees life as a burden, as suffering and pain. It is our self-loathing, lack of self-respect, and lack of self-worth that has created such a dark world. Our life conditions are difficult because we live in a satanic society based in social Darwinism, in which the purpose of life is to fight for survival, where money is our god, brainwashing is our education, and slavery is our way of life. Most of the food created in the world is thrown in the trash, and more vacant homes exist than homeless people. Have you observed how quickly houses are built? Don't tell me we have a shortage of houses and food, because we most definitely don't. Our potential is being regressed by our lack of care for truth and morality, our selfishness, and the psychopathic desires of our controllers. Children become trouble because we corrupt them with our culture and our beliefs. Children are often more connected to truth and intuition than we are, seeing things as they are, and they rebel against us because our souls are so empty and our minds so opposed to truth that we give them no other choice. We tell them that imaginary numbers are what have value, not their souls. We tell them that it is perfectly fine to eat murder on our plates. And then we tell them that abortion is an act of love, and it's mommy's decision whether a child should be born or not. Then we reassure them that they were lucky that we wanted them, which only reinforces conditional love. So we wonder why children grow up to be so problematic, and then in our sick, twisted minds, we use this as an excuse to abort them before even having them, saying, I want no problematic child in my life. The problem is that we fail to understand the objective difference between good and evil, and governments have been brainwashing us to think that evil is good. Of course this is going to mess up our children.
Have we not suffered enough as a species to still not know what evil is?
While children are gifts for our lives, they don't come here for us. They didn't come here to serve you or I. They came here for their own spiritual evolution and to learn their own moral lessons. Who are we to rob them from that? They even have much to teach us, connecting us with the purity of the unconditioned heart and mind. People are the most valuable things in life, even though our satanic society will tell you it's money. In fact, society will tell you that making money from destroying life is a rather intelligent option. The system of money will always oppose true morality. This is why war will remain the most profitable of businesses. You are told of the financial hardship you will face by having your child, but there is no price tag to life. The value of life is never a cost, only to the satanic worldview, in which the heart remains absent. One can always find ethical financial support when they live under natural law. Love expands into opportunities, but fear contracts us into falsehoods that there is no other option than the worst option possible. Let's get more into philosophy. People often conflate rights with choice. The truth of the matter is that neither man's law or natural law prohibits choice per se, so there is no real validity to being pro-choice. We all have choice, free will. Rather than being pro-choice, we should be pro-right, pro-rights, pro-making the right choice. Even saying that one has the right to choose is an error, because the word right means that it is right to do, that it is in alignment with natural law. And not every choice is right to do. There are many wrong choices we can make. Thus, while anyone has the choice to do anything they want, choice is not synonymous with morality. On the other hand, natural law consequences are not delivered by any person or organization. They are cosmic, karmic, and fated, and cannot be avoided. But when these consequences occur, cannot be predicted. When people say that by desiring abortion to be illegal, they are removing a woman's choice, they are in error. A woman can always choose abortion. She can perform it on herself or find assistance in the black market, usually without legal repercussions, as when abortion was illegal in the United States, women did not receive criminalization. Rather than arresting the woman having the abortions, legal officials were more likely to interrogate these women to obtain evidence against the abortion provider in order to close down that provider's business. Abortion is not a natural choice any healthy woman would make, as it is an act of destruction because her mind is infected with fear. Because most women would not kill their own fetus, their choice is greatly influenced by propaganda. On the other hand, if a woman had to perform the abortion herself, she would be faced with the reality that she is in fact committing an act of murder, that she must actually use a weapon, which is commonly a coat hanger, to dismember the living being inside of her, and hope to excrete all the victim's body parts. A major pro-choice argument is that we should make abortions easy and accessible so that women don't harm themselves from trying to kill their babies with a hanger. This is like saying we should provide murderers with weapons to kill their prey. It seems extreme, but both cases have a weapon, an object used violently against another, and both are about using a weapon on a human being, just different ages. What we have been teaching women with poisoned feminism is that they should not experience consequences for their actions. To desire to make abortions as painless and easy as possible is making the wrong choice comfortable for women. But unexpected events are not tragic events. If we lived in a world that valued life, we would help ease women's fear of the consequences of pregnancy, because the consequences of pregnancy is life. And there is no greater consequence. Even in a materialist language, life is a bonus to life. But the sickness of a materialist is that he values money more than life. You know we live in a toxic environment when women don't want to bring children into this world. That something is seriously fucked up. Plus, the financial system doesn't really facilitate trade and exchange, but restricts and regresses growth and potential. It is against the currency of consciousness. So this all boils down to, should we make wrong action easy and accessible? Nowadays, getting an abortion is so painless and easy, a woman never sees the victim's body. The doctors are very motivated to make it a very pleasant experience, since they are well paid. Thus, making abortion illegal merely makes it harder for a woman to get one. It doesn't stop them, and in the past they have rarely received punishment. Do I think that man's law should punish a woman for an abortion? No, I don't. Under natural law, we all get our karma, and women will always pay a hefty price for this action. Her life will never be the same. While we cannot control another person and make their choices for them, we can influence people with our voice after we've obtained the knowledge of objective morality, so that we can explain what right is. With knowledge, we can hope to prevent people from making the wrong decision, or to help them correct themselves, find repentance and self-forgiveness after the fact. And that is what I am doing here. I am not forcing a woman against her will to make the right choice. We live in an age where she can find endless support for the wrong choice. Now, most pro-choice people rarely say they are pro-abortion, even in Roe versus Wade.
We are not here to advocate abortion. We do not ask this court to rule that abortion is good or desirable in any particular situation. We are here to advocate for the right of a woman to determine whether or not she would continue or terminate a pregnancy.
Nobody likes abortion, okay? But you can't tell somebody what to do. I mean, she has rights over this, especially if she doesn't like the guy that got her pregnant.
But pro-choice means you're both pro-choices, pro-life and pro-abortion. Therefore, you are pro-abortion, which is really just the opposite of pro-life, meaning that it is in fact pro-death. Pro-choice is pro-death. It is claimed that while abortion is wrong, it must be a necessary option for women, that we should trust women to know when the evil of abortion is necessary. And at this point, I must make the note that the whole foundation of government is based on the anti-principle of necessary evil, as our founding fathers declared. However, there is no such thing as a necessary evil. Furthermore, by using the term pro-choice, these individuals can say that they are also pro-life, the fallacy of linguistic ambiguity. Yet, you cannot be both pro-life and pro-abortion. How can we give women the right to take wrong action and then trust women to take the right action? If we cared about women, we would want them to take the right action, because right action is what leads to the good. Abortion is not pro-woman. Woman is merely being used and manipulated, a victim of mind control turned into a murderer. Just as male soldiers have been turned into murderers, used for profit and eugenics, so too are women being used for the same. Roe versus Wade could never be overturned because our New World Order operating through the United Nations claims that abortion is a human right, when abortion is a violation of human rights. In 2005, the United Nations ordered Peru to compensate a woman for denying her an abortion, which was the first time the UN declared abortion a right. This shows the power of the UN in its ability to coerce countries to follow its commands. In the UN document, it states that all human beings have the right to life, but then later it says that state parties must provide safe, legal, and effective access to abortion. This is not just saying that abortion is legal, it is saying that abortions must be provided by governments. And it is a false claim that rights must be provided for, a claim of all socialist dictatorships. The problem with positive laws and creating so-called rights out of thin air is that besides being based in relativism, you cannot make a right a law, because there are infinite right actions any person can take, a right action being an action that doesn't cause harm to another. True law, natural law, is apophatic, meaning that it is the prohibition of wrong, not the assertion of right. It is what we can't do, not what we can do. The hidden agenda behind positive law is for governments to provide that right and control how it is done, as ultimate control is the goal. This is why the United Nations is considering food and shelter a right that they must provide for as they roll out their Agenda 2030 and the 5G smart grid. They want to own our property and determine where we get our food, so that they can control us and have the ability to murder us easily if we become a threat. Just because a person has the right to do something, like the right to have children, doesn't mean that governments must provide husbands and wives for everyone. Such a belief is antithesis to sovereignty, because we become dependent on our provider, and government poses as mommy and daddy. This destroys freedom and the choices for right action. Abortion rights have been conflated with women's rights, reproductive rights, and even constitutional rights, but these are not rights, they are choices. Just because a woman has a choice doesn't mean it's right.
I knew that what I was going to do was right, because it was right for me.
You know, in that aspect it is hard, because some days I wish I was pregnant, and I wish, I wonder what my belly would look like, and, would I be having a boy or a girl, and, what would my life be like right now, but then I look back on it and I realize that, I spent the entire summer in Europe, and I did a lot of amazing things, and I cycled most of Europe, and, I got to make lots of money and work and enjoy life, and so in that aspect I don't regret it. I know I did the best that I could given the circumstances that I was dealt, and I know it was the right choice for me.
The satanic mindset plays a major role in the psychology of neo-feminism. Many neo-feminists openly claim that they identify with the ideology of Satanism. The first tenet of the satanic ideology is the dictum that, quote, self-preservation is the highest law. Put in other words, the survival and comfort of the physical self is always a more important goal than doing what is morally right. Live only for yourself and care only about you and yours. If you must step on others to get what you want, then so be it, for this is a dog-eat-dog world. Ladies and gentlemen, above all else, that's what Satanism is. The ideologies that clearly define the overarching worldview of Satanism is perpetual me thinking, ego gratification, hedonism, and always wanting to be in control of other people. Would you agree that the vast majority of the individuals in our society subscribe to such a satanic worldview?
Under moral relativism, goodness, morality, and rights are not objective. They are subjective. Moral relativism is popular with the New Age movement as a form of non-judgmentalism, tolerance, and acceptance, which is seen as divine. However, there is nothing divine about harm and evil, and the natural law of polarity is a fact of the cosmos. This is the reversal of real morality. This relates to the popular ideology of pragmatism, which denies the existence of objective truth, stating that truth is what is right for me. We can easily see how this ideology has perpetuated much evil in the world, as the global elitists are just doing what is right for them, in their quest for more and more power. To them, the eugenics operation of massive genocide through war, disease, manufactured famine, and abortion is right for them. It advances their goals. Pragmatism also states that the ends justify the means, because it is a results-oriented approach. While abortion propaganda teaches women that killing their unborn child justifies their desire for freedom, there is no freedom with a guilty conscience. Freedom requires right action. Along with relativism, pragmatism also relates to consequentialism and utilitarianism. The moral deficiency in their arguments is that the wrong action can have an initially positive result or a perceived positive result. For example, when one steals, he gains a new possession. Yet, there will be negative karma and the torment of the subconscious. All harm we cause others comes back to us. True understanding of morality means that there is no reason that would ever rationalize harm. There is never an evil means that justifies a purported good ends. We must seek the right action no matter the initial results, as to see the bigger karmic picture, and also the value of sacrifice. Real morality sees the value of heroic sacrifice that we should be instilling in our girls, doing what is right and good, even though it may be difficult, as ultimately consciousness evolves this way. Women have the opportunity to understand the amazing value of human life, experiencing it physically, inside her, in its very beginnings. The truth is that natural law rights are eternal and immutable and do not come from some man-made body of control freaks. All living beings have rights. Living beings have the right to not be harmed and the right to live, no matter their age.
It mistakes our dignity for mere autonomy, for choosing. And it doesn't ask the question, what is the right thing to choose, but it simply valorizes the choice itself.
Both professors assert this sort of thinking stems from an individualistic way of thinking, believing everything is relative. There's no real good and no real evil. Rather, anyone can choose which path to take, what to do with his or her own body, and cannot be told he or she is wrong.
I have a right to do whatever I like so long as it doesn't harm others. And then they suppose that acts such as abortion and euthanasia do not harm others. Well, certainly it's clear in the case of abortion that abortion takes the life of an innocent child in the womb. There is a victim. There is a third party. Even with euthanasia, we know that when a regime of medicalized killing is unleashed in a society, it's not simply the people who wish to be killed who end up being killed. I think it's very important for people who see the truth of these matters and who understand how evil this move is toward recognizing abortion and euthanasia as human rights. It is incumbent upon all people of all traditions of faith to join together.
Because that being is living inside the mother, people think it has no rights, and that the mother should decide who lives and who dies. Just because a child is inside of her for 9 months doesn't mean she owns the child's entire life, considering it could potentially live for 100 years. Just because the fetus is dependent on the mom doesn't make it less of a human being. A baby out of the womb is also dependent on the parents, and even more so in the sense of interaction. At the instant of conception, her body is no longer just her body. The embryo and fetus is not an extension of her body, but existing within her body and connected to it through the temporary tissue called the placenta. Physically, it is very clear that there is a differentiation between two bodies. If this differentiation wasn't there, abortions would be very difficult to perform without really harming the mother. The unborn baby owns his body, just in the way each individual being owns his or her body. This is the natural law principle of self-ownership. When the woman has another person suction out his body and place it in a waster bin, she is destroying the human being. The fact that we have brainwashed women to think that her baby's body is her body shows how illogical and selfish a society we are. Women don't even cognitively understand what a baby is, and that it is existing inside of her. The whole abortion clinic rarely uses the term baby and being to describe this process. We find it perfectly acceptable for a woman to perceive an inconvenient pregnancy as an unfortunate invasion inside her body and a negative intrusion upon her life, like a cancer that needs to be removed. And we celebrate the removal of this being as a woman's relief and freedom, when nothing could be further from the truth.
We have sunk to a new low in our society, and it is time for us to rectify what we have done.
So what is natural law then? Natural, inherent in nature, reality and truth. It's not caused or made by man. And law is an existing condition which is binding and cannot be changed. So natural is nature, it exists. And laws like gravities and thermodynamics, cause and effect, they're immutable. You cannot change these laws. So as many people seem to equate, when you say natural law and nature, they seem to equate it to Darwinian theory, the survival of the fittest. Whereas natural law wouldn't be that. Natural law isn't the Darwinian theory, which is just a theory, but it's more like in your own body, you've got trillions of cells all coexisting, and they're all working together, and they're creating the miracle that is you. So natural law isn't here in a competitive nature, it's here so we exist alongside it for our betterment. So we minimise suffering by aligning to it, not through a threat of violence as man's law would, but because we acknowledge it, we understand it, and we align to it. So many people would call it universal law or spiritual law or karmic law. It's basically don't steal. You know, the golden rule, don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to yourself.
Natural law regards the objective difference between right and wrong behavior, actions that do not cause harm and actions that cause harm. To understand natural law anarchy is to understand that everyone is equal under the law. But man's law falsely claims that some men should rule other men and should create fictitious laws to enforce upon them. If your neighbor were trying to rule over you with behavioral restrictions that didn't cause harm, requiring you to pay them a tax, you would easily see this as wrong. What gives your neighbor the rights to do this? Well, what if your neighbor had more weapons than you? Now, this does not give him the right, because right is not might. Your neighbor is simply violating your rights under coercion and threat. Government is simply your evil neighbor, and you comply to avoid violence. Just as bankers create the self-serving laws of the money game for financial control, the lawmakers create the self-serving rules of the legal game to control our actions and restrict freedom, so that they have more and we have less.
You didn't think you were a slave? You have a right to own property. Can you own property without paying lifelong taxation for simply exercising that right? You have a right to keep what you earn. Are part of your earnings taken in unpaid servitude? You have a right to be left alone, yet innocent people have their property and liberty foreclosed on a daily basis, not for any real crime, but for non-compliance, for nothing other than defiance of the slave master, for behavior that threatens the sociopathic judge or police officer, or simply enrich those who have borrowed the state-granted privilege to take what is yours. Can you even exercise your right to travel without paying for licenses for your vehicle and yourself as a driver? You are being taxed and penalized for exercising your rights. The law says your rights may not be infringed. Our labor, our freedom, our rights are being taken every day. We are slaves.
When the anarchist says no to the system of man's law, if he is not coming from natural law, his understanding of law will be distorted. As law is not the problem, it's the wrong kind of law. Law will always exist because right and wrong always exists, and consequences always exists. But do we understand this correctly is the question. Man's law exists as a proxy for natural law, as a proxy for morality, as most people think that what is legal is moral and what is illegal is immoral. But in the heat of controversy, we start to see that truth and man's law does not always coincide with morality, and many find themselves disagreeing with man's law, as in the case of Roe versus Wade. While philosophically man's law is evil because it is the arbitration of rights by a ruling class, it still retains some correspondence to natural law. If this weren't the case, the system would crumble, because evil destroys itself when not covered in partial truths. Consequently, many actions deemed criminal by the legal system are immoral actions, like rape, theft, and murder. This is where man's law and natural law align. Because of this, we must desire for man's law to be as close to natural law as possible, and this can be somewhat confusing to the anarchist who wants to throw out man's law entirely. Even though man's law as a whole is immoral, it represents the morality of the people and is not going away anytime soon. This means that we should not fight just laws, and that we should fight unjust laws. Knowing what makes a law just or not is whether it resonates with natural law, the real law. Even Christian statist Thomas Aquinas understood this. Quote,
Natural law is less specific than human laws, but human laws are applications of natural law and cannot deviate from what we might call the spirit of the natural law, as applied to the time and place of the human law's promulgation. If a human law does deviate in this way, and it is not a proper and rationally defensible application of the natural law, then it is a perversion of law, which is to say, it is a law in name only.
End quote. Unfortunately, like most people, Aquinas confuses laws with rules. Yes, we need rules when it comes to travel and other group actions, but not laws. Rules with a functional purpose will be followed by reason. Returning back to the matter, some anarchists that don't have the understanding of the relationship between natural law and man's law want to fight all of man's law, or even fight just laws that are in alignment with natural law. They fail to understand that morality and right action are in direct proportion to our level of freedom and anarchy, external anarchy, regardless of their relation to man's law. Freedom doesn't mean the right to harm, but the opposite. The false form of anarchy is found in Satanism and is about doing whatever you want, whenever you want, regardless of whether it harms another. Satanism rejects higher law by exploiting free will, corrupting the notion of true freedom as being free to harm. Since my channel is a philosophy one, I wanted to mention that this false form of anarchy was popularized during the 19th century anarchist movement with this book from Max Stirner called The Ego and Its Own, The Case of the Individual Against Authority. Stirner asserts the argument of egotism, that a person can only act in self-interest, rejecting altruism. This book has been said to have influenced the existential Nietzsche. Altruism is the ability to make moral sacrifice, and humans can develop this ability. It is the embodiment of the hero archetype in both men and women. Heroes put themselves on the line for the greater good. And doing what is right may not bring egoic satisfaction or social resonance. True anarchy, as the state of external freedom, exists when our hearts, minds, spirits, and actions are in alignment with truth and love. Until then, the control system will continue to be a manifestation of our collective immorality. On one level, we must attempt to wake up man from the control system as a whole for him to see that he operates through moral relativism, as does man's law. And that is the source of suffering. Through apophysis, discovering truth through the negative, through falsehood, he can recognize natural law based in objective morality through the illegitimacy of man's law. But only certain people will be ready for this. On another level, the level of the rest of the world, we must seek to influence humanity by desiring man's law to be in as much as alignment into natural law as possible, to prevent harm to others. While we educate people on natural law, we are attempting to avoid catastrophe and the destruction of civilization into extreme immoral chaos, in the hopes that we may peacefully evolve rather than continue the bloody cycles of revolution. Furthermore, this helps our cultural values, since government laws affect how people perceive and act in the world. When we normalize evil through these laws, making it acceptable, we are descending into great darkness. From what has been said, it is not contradictory to support man's law when it aligns to natural law. What true anarchist who understands the long road to freedom would want murder to be legalized in the meantime, in the name of anarchy? What I have provided is a realistic assessment based in both life conditions and metaphysical principles. Without man's government, harming others is still prohibited by natural law, and we will face consequences regardless of man's government. The irony is that the consequences for doing harm in the aggregate is itself man's government. We enslave ourselves by our own actions. There is no true anarchy without morality. Man's law is a reflection of our own deviation from natural law. And as time unfolds, man's law will ultimately invert natural law, as we see done with abortion. When we realize that what is legal can be immoral and what is illegal can be moral, we have taken the first steps out of social conditioning. This is a glitch in the matrix. We can start to differentiate the control system based on power, control, greed, and corruption from nature's system of objective morality based in the principle of the absolute good. For if we are to oppose man's law, then we must have some solid basis to do this. And this solid basis can only be natural law. There are two ways in which man's law and natural law don't align. The first is when man's law prohibits certain behaviors that exist within our rights to perform, and this is the destruction of liberty and freedom. By restricting actions that we have the right to make, the control system holds back our potential and growth so that we remain dependent, weak slaves. The second way in which there is incongruity between man's law and natural law is when we make immoral actions legal. The government gives a person the right to perform wrong actions in the belief that government creates rights, which it does not. The biggest example of this is war. In adding insult to injury, we force people to go to war against their will. This happened during the draft of the Vietnam War, when government forced people to invade and slaughter people in another country mandated by law. And nothing is more evil than calling evil law. In reality, true law is of love. And yet the brainwashed masses still love their country, love obedience, and worship their military that ruins so many lives. Acknowledging these two ways for man's law and natural law to be deviated, we can see that unjust prohibitions like the use of cannabis and psychedelics, which don't harm another, while wrong for government to prohibit, is not as wrong as legalizing immoral actions like war and genocide. Abortion is a genocide against the youngest people in our world. Since 1980, we have had 1.5 billion surgical abortions performed, thousands every day. If abortion never became legal, many of these lives would have been saved, but instead it was rationalized as a victory for personal freedom, bodily integrity, and the right to privacy. What about the freedom of the baby? What about the bodily integrity of the baby? Do you have the right to murder someone in private? States like Missouri, Alabama, and Ohio that desire to prohibit abortion are not attempting to pass positive law. They are attempting to retract the positive abortion law. Some anarchists and libertarians are against this and believe we should keep Roe v. Wade decision because it keeps government out of our affairs. Their argument is that by legalizing abortion, there is less of man's law to deal with. However, this is an error in thought, as the creation of positive laws, turning wrongs into rights, supports man's law most directly, since man's law is based on our corruption. On a side note, the very fact that state laws are in contradiction to federal laws reveals the arbitrary nature of laws and that they have nothing to do with objective morality. Most positive laws legalizing behavior, are fake laws that give fake rights to people, rights they don't intrinsically have. For example, the income tax is a positive law added to the Constitution that states that we must give the government a portion of our money. That is not a law, that is a demand with threat of violence, as we see in our neighbor analogy. The Patriot Act is another positive law created after 9/11 that allows the government to spy on all communications, have all of our information like bank account, and search and seize whenever. These are wrongs, not rights. This is why government has to create laws, because without the fake laws, they are in the default naturally wrong actions to take. Such positive laws mandate exceptions to what common sense tells us is bad. Abortion is not a private matter that only involves the woman and her body. Feminism merely appeals to a woman's self-loathing and unhealthy ego, never her mind or heart. But in the act of abortion, there is a victim here. A victim with a beating heart or soon beating heart. While some anarchists want women to choose life but have abortion as a necessary evil of circumstance, the opposite has occurred, as abortion is now simply contraception and requires no justification. Selling abortions has become a hot commodity, and meeting quotas is good for business.
And if we hit our goal, our line was green. If we were 5% under, it was yellow. If we were 10% under, it was red. That's when we needed to have a corrective action plan. Why we didn't hit the goal, what we're going to do differently next time. So we were really very goal-oriented. I trained my staff the way that I was trained, which was to really encourage women to choose abortion, to have it at Planned Parenthood, because that counts as, towards our goal. We would try to get the appointment scheduled for the abortion before they left our clinic. We would say things like, your pregnancy test, your visit today is X number of dollars, how much are you going to be able to pay towards that? If they'd say, I'm not able to pay today, then we would say something like, well, if you can't pay $10 today, how are you going to take care of a baby? Have you priced diapers? Do you know how much it costs to buy a car seat? Where would you go for help? There's no place in Storm Lake or whatever town they were in, where you can get help as a pregnant mom. So really, don't you think your smartest choice is termination? We can take care of that, set it up for you.
We've heard reports that at Planned Parenthoods with abortion quotas, there are incentives for those that reach their goals. Is that true?
It is true. We would have things like pizza parties. Occasionally they would say you can have 2 hours of PTO. If your center consistently hit goal and you were green all the time, like 3 months in a row, you might be center manager of the month and get to go to Des Moines and have lunch, with the upper management or something. So there were incentives built in, and it sounds kind of crazy, but pizza is a motivator.
So pizza party.
Pizza party.
I felt like I was more of a salesman sometimes to sell abortions. And we were told on a regular basis that you have a quota to meet to keep this clinic open.
Moreover, government has done more than make abortion a private matter, as it has donated tons of money to abortion clinics all over the world, and we will get into the global agenda soon. We have seen how the United Nations has made abortion not only a positive law, but a law that it must be available to every woman in the world. Abortions are not provided for difficult outlier cases, but as a common practice. If it's a right, you should be able to do it all the time, and for any reason. Contrary to what anarchists want, after Roe v. Wade, government has been more in our affairs than not, as our tax money, the money government steals from us, now supports the multi-billion-dollar industry. Furthermore, abortion propaganda infiltrates our education system and media to molest the minds of women, to turn them against their most precious duty as the bearers of life. What anarchists need to understand is that we live in an immoral society, so having abortion an option for women will be chosen. Our current global dictatorship reveals how corrupt We are. And we think that we can trust women to make the best choice from a good and bad option, when this dictatorship actively promotes the bad option. The level of government exists to the degree that people are immoral, and when government continues to legalize immorality, it will only happen more and more genocide. In 1913, the 16th Amendment was added to the Constitution that made income tax constitutional after the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional only years before. While taxes were as low as 1% of your income in 1913, today they are much higher and on average between 20 to 30%. Positive laws asserting non-rights like the income tax can only get worse. Things only get worse once you set evil in motion. Legalizing wrong actions brings no limit to the crime and ultimately glorifies it. While we often think of the 1960s as the social revolution towards peace, civil rights, liberty, and gender equality, there was definitely a darker contradictory subtext. During this time, men would lose all rights to keep their children, and the youngest children would be declared to have no rights at all. In the late 1960s, abortion was legalized with zero restrictions in much of Europe and Canada, and the US would soon follow. Since then, this runaway train of legalizing the immoral action of abortion has led to a chain of destructive events, as all other corrupt opportunistic systems of control and greed intertwined with government join in to get a piece of the action. In the public sector, abortion has become an incredibly profitable business, a high-paying, respectable profession, and tax-supported industry. Another negative effect from legalizing abortion is that so much resources are being poured into it that we have less health services for the living. Money is taken out of primary health care. Now that abortion is connected to the profit-based industry, aborted fetuses are simply a commodity used in anti-aging beauty products, pharmaceuticals, vaccines, and even food. The biotech company Genomics has developed chemical additives to enhance flavor and smell using fetal tissues. They have developed products for Pepsi, Kraft Foods, Nestle, Campbell's Soup, and Coca-Cola. Here are some of the food items.
The root of all evil.
This is nothing other than cannibalism and a satanic blood sacrifice ritual, very similar to carnism.
What is the ultimate form of dominance? Eating your prey.
Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider, existing in 134 nations, had the annual revenue of $1.3 billion in 2014. And guess what? Government donated $500 million that same year, while the profitable institution remains tax-exempt.
Prenatal care. These are the kinds of services that folks depend on Planned Parenthood for.
And a president who will fight for prenatal care.
Prenatal care. And that is what we want to focus on. That is what is so vital.
Thank you for calling Planned Parenthood. My name's how can I assist you today?
Hi, I was hoping to make an appointment for prenatal care.
For what type of service?
Prenatal care, pregnancy care.
We don't have prenatal care here. Planned Parenthood offers abortion, so they don't offer prenatal care.
No, we don't do prenatal services. I mean, it's called Planned Parenthood. I know it's kind of deceiving.
Do you have OBGYNs here?
We do not, no.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
Which is a deceptive name, right? I think the same thing. Or, if you were looking at termination options, we can do that as well.
Did you know that Planned Parenthood can take care of all your reproductive health needs? Whether it's an annual exam, pregnancy testing and counseling, prenatal care, we are here for you with high-quality, low-cost service.
Okay, so not at any Planned Parenthood, they don't have prenatal
Correct.
care?
No, see, we don't see pregnant women as a way of giving prenatal care.
Okay.
We see pregnant women, if they are considering other options.
Like what other options? Like would you see the doctor for?
At this location?
Yes.
So at this location, you guys do medication abortion?
What pregnancy services do you offer?
We only offer termination services.
We actually don't offer prenatal services. We're not licensed to do so in Oregon or Washington.
Do any of the Planned Parenthoods?
No, we do not offer any prenatal care.
Undercover investigations have revealed that Planned Parenthood sells body parts of its aborted fetuses.
We have it on gruesome tape. Here's a top Planned Parenthood doctor talking about how to use less crunchy techniques to kill babies so that their organs can be more easily sold.
How he feels about using a less crunchy technique to get more whole specimens.
And here's another top Planned Parenthood doctor talking about the ease with which baby intestines can be harvested and eyeballs can be extracted.
These orbits are good too, and at this stage you start to get the retinal pigment epithelium, which is in the back, which is you've collected that before.
So all the orbits are so easy.
It's just delightful. A third top Planned Parenthood doctor negotiated over baby body part prices while standing over a tray of dissected children.
I think the per item thing works a little better just because we can see how much we can get out of it.
A tragic consequence for abortion legalization is that it leads to infanticide. Partial birth abortion already blurs the line between killing a baby in the womb and killing the baby out of the womb.
And as a last resort, doctors use partial birth abortion. This is a procedure in which doctors use an ultrasound, they find a baby's legs with the forceps, they pull it into the birth canal, they deliver the entire baby except for the head, and then they stab the baby in the skull with a scissors, insert a suction tube into the skull, and suck out the brains. This is also the preferred method for ensuring that the internal organs are best preserved, so Planned Parenthood can hawk them to Big Pharma.
Taking this further, former employees of late trimester abortion clinics have come out with their horror stories of babies fully out of the womb being murdered or put on a rack to die.
When he did an abortion, especially a over 20-week abortion, most of the time the fetus would come completely out before he either cut the spinal cord or he introduced one of the instruments into the soft spot of the fetus in order to kill the fetus.
My name is Jill Stanek, and I'm a registered nurse who witnessed babies being delivered alive and left out to die.
The pro-choice argument cannot address the difference between killing a baby inside the mother's womb and a baby a few seconds out of the womb. If they admit that killing the baby outside of the womb is wrong, then they have to admit that the baby is not the woman's body. Thus, the abortion industry supports infanticide.
It's just really hard for me to even ask you this question because I'm almost in disbelief. If a baby is born on a table as a result of a botched abortion, what would Planned Parenthood want to have happen to that child that's struggling for life? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we believe that any decision that's made should be left up to the woman, her family, and the physician.
If I were to choose to do it that way, like, you would just let it go, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you would just let it die on its own if it was whole and breathing. Yes?
Then do not resuscitate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just let it die on its own and... Okay.
And the chances of...
Two ethicists argue it's okay to kill babies, even after they're born. The controversial comments were published by the Oxford-educated professors in a leading British medical journal. They dismissed newborns as potential and not actual persons. They say killing them's no different to a normal prenatal abortion. But critics brand it infanticide.
Recently this year, in 2019, the Senate rejected a bill that desired to care for infants who survived an abortion.
We are not here to debate abortion. That is not what this bill is about that Senator Sass has introduced. We are here today to decide whether or not it should be legal in the United States of America to kill or neglect an infant who's been born alive after a botched abortion.
The Senate held a roll call vote Monday on the Born Alive bill, which was introduced by Nebraska Senator Ben Sass. If passed, it would have required doctors provide appropriate medical care to newborns who survive botched abortions. While the bill received a bipartisan majority, it failed to receive the 60 votes required to break a Democratic filibuster. The final roll call vote was 53 to 44.
It isn't about new restrictions on abortion. It isn't about changing the options available to women. It's just about recognizing that a newborn baby is a newborn baby, period. They're looking at a human being with human rights, period.
This should be far beyond Republican versus Democrat. This should be about having a heart. And if you see a baby, you think a baby deserves care, and we have an obligation to provide care for those helpless little babies.
Delegate Kathy Tran pitched her bill that shocked many Americans earlier this week.
A woman is about to give birth. She has physical signs that she is about to give birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking
point.
if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
What I have done is try to make sure that women are able to make these decisions and access these services in a timely manner.
Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia is also facing backlash after his support for the bill.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
We found out that our governor is willing basically to embrace the notion that if a child is born alive, you actually just keep the child comfortable while you discuss how or whether to allow it to die.
Here is a story of a woman who survived an abortion.
Weighing less than 3 pounds, Melissa Oden was born beating the odds. She is a survivor of a failed saline infusion abortion.
God did have a plan.
It's a procedure that injects a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid surrounding a preborn child. Cared for by NICU nurses at first, baby Melissa was soon adopted into a loving home. Now, Oden is a wife and mother, a Catholic convert, and a pro-life advocate, with speeches spanning from pregnancy centers to Capitol Hill.
I should have been delivered dead that day as a successful abortion. In 2013, I learned through contact with my biological mother's family that not only was this abortion forced upon her against her will at the age of 19, but also that it was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, a nurse, who delivered me in this final step of the abortion procedure at St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City, Iowa. Unfortunately, I also learned that when my grandmother realized that the abortion had not succeeded in ending my life, she demanded that I be left to die. I may never know how exactly 2 nurses who were on staff that day found out about me, but what I do know is that their willingness to fight for medical care to be provided to me ultimately sustained my life. And I know where children like me were left to die at St. Luke's Hospital. I met a nurse there who delivered a child much like me in 1976. She delivered a little boy after a failed saline infusion abortion, but she followed her superior's orders, and she placed him there in a utility closet in a bucket of formaldehyde to be picked up later as medical waste after he was left there to die alone. A bucket of formaldehyde in a utility closet was meant to be my fate after I survived that abortion attempt.
Again, once man's law deviates from natural law and we legalize immoral actions, a horrific chain of events will follow. Now, in part 1, we talked about the procedure of late-term abortions, but here at the end of this video, I will show you a real-life late-term abortion and ask you the question, what is a true dystopia? The Handmaid's Tale feminist protesters are telling you that if a woman cannot abort her baby up until birth, that we are living in a misogynistic dystopia. Is this true? Please end the video now if you do not wish to see this reality, but if you make that choice, ask yourself, if abortion is perfectly normal and natural and moral and a right, then why do you have to skip this part? Just like the vegan issue, if your eyes can't stomach it, then neither should your ethics.
there is never an evil means that justifies a purported good end.
What is the right thing to choose, but it simply valorizes the choice itself.